Imagine opening your next paycheck and realizing it's lighter than it should be. Not by 20 bucks, not by a rounding error. Hundreds, maybe thousands, gone. No new truck payment, no surprise medical bill, no new hobby you accidentally fell into. Just taxes. And not the kind you can ignore because it only shows up once a year. This is the kind that hits you every 2 weeks, quietly, automatically, until you finally do the math and realize your household has been drafted into a new financial reality. If you live in California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, or Connecticut, the warning lights are flashing. Budget gaps, pension promises, and policy overhauls are colliding with inflation and a changing economy. The result is predictable. Governments go hunting for revenue, and working people become the easiest target. Today, I'm going to walk you through why these 5 states are ground zero for what feels like a tax storm, how it can hit your wallet in ways most people don't see coming, and what you can do, starting now, to protect your income, your options, and the life you're building. Stay with me. This isn't theory. This is your cash flow, your home, your retirement timeline, and your ability to say yes to the things that matter. First, the stage. Why taxes surge nationwide, and why these states get hit hard as taxes don't rise because politicians wake up and decide to be villains. They rise because math doesn't care about speeches. A state has only a few levers: cut services, borrow more, raise revenue through taxes and fees, push costs downward onto cities, counties, and school districts, which then raise property taxes and local fees. When budgets break, the easiest lever is the one that doesn't require immediate pain and government payrolls. Extract more money from the same residents who are already paying the most. Here's what's driving the pressure across the country with special intensity in those 5 states. 1. The post-pandemic economic hangover never really ended. During COVID and the years after, spending climbed, systems got stretched, and governments made commitments based on unusually strong revenue years. In some places, a surge in capital gains, stock market growth, and federal aid temporarily made the books look healthier than they really were. But temporary revenue is a trap. When that wave pulls back, the obligations remain. 2. Unfunded liabilities are real debt, even if they aren't called debt. Pensions, retiree healthcare, infrastructure maintenance. These aren't optional. You can delay them, but you can't delete them without consequences. When pension costs rise, they squeeze everything else. That means either cuts or taxes. And cuts are politically painful. Taxes are politically survivable, especially when they can be framed as only targeting the wealthy, even though the actual collection often lands on everyone. 3. Remote work reshuffled the tax map. When high earners and high spending households move, or even just split time between states, revenue shifts. States that rely heavily on income taxes and the spending patterns of commuters feel it first. Remote work didn't just change where people sit. It changed where they buy, where they register vehicles, where they pay property taxes, and how much pressure lands on the remaining tax base. 4. Inflation quietly raises the cost of government. Inflation isn't just a grocery store issue. It increases construction costs, healthcare costs, payroll demands, and interest costs. States that already run tight budgets suddenly face higher bills for the same level of service. 5. Tax the rich often becomes tax the base. Even if a proposal starts at the top, it rarely stays there. Why? The top is volatile. Capital gains rise and fall. High earners can move, delay income, or restructure it. Governments still need predictable money. So the focus expands, broaden the sales tax base, add fees, shift burdens to property taxes, target services, adjust withholding rules, create surcharges, tighten exemptions, and redefine who counts as a resident. That last one matters more than most people realize. Residency rules are where states quietly win. 6. Federal support isn't endless. When federal money steps back, local governments fill gaps. They don't do it with speeches. They do it with property tax hikes, reassessments, temporary surcharges, new fees, and enforcement. Put all that together, and you get a reality most people underestimate. In high-tax states that already squeeze residents, the next phase isn't a gentle increase, it's a pressure release, and it can show up as a 5% to 15% jump in your total burden when you add everything up. Income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, fees, tolls, utilities, vehicle costs, and the small charges that keep multiplying. Now, let's zoom in on the epicenters. 1. California. The Golden State turning into a tax wildfire. California has two defining features when it comes to taxes: a high dependence on top earners and volatile income streams like capital gains, a cost structure that is expensive to maintain, even in good years. California already sits near the top nationally in overall burden, and there have been widely reported deficit estimates in the tens of billions in recent cycles. When a state's budget depends on a narrow slice of high earners, revenue can swing fast, up in boom years, down when markets cool. The spending commitments, however, don't swing down as easily. So what happens when the numbers don't work? You start hearing the familiar menu: higher top income tax rates, expanding sales taxes into services that used to be untaxed, new or expanded fees tied to environmental and transportation goals, proposals around wealth taxes or mark-to-market concepts aimed at ultra high net worth households, more aggressive enforcement and auditing. Here's the part that matters for the average household. Even if you don't earn top bracket money, California can still reach you through the side doors. Sales tax expansion. When services get taxed, everything from home repairs to professional services becomes more expensive. Property tax pressure. Even with rules like Proposition 13, reassessments, parcel taxes, bond measures, and local levies can climb. And if you move within the state, your new purchase price resets your tax base. Vehicle and road fees. As fuel tax revenue faces long-term pressure, states look for other ways to fund roads. EV fees are one example, but the broader trend is road usage charging, cost stacking. In California, the tax conversation can't be separated from housing, insurance, and utilities. When those climb, the same paycheck supports less life. For a lot of families, the tax increase isn't a single bill. It's a slow squeeze. Your paycheck withholding rises. Your property tax bill edges up through local measures. Your insurance premiums climb. Your utility costs rise. Your daily costs get taxed in more places. And then you look up and realize you're paying thousands more per year to maintain the same lifestyle, with less left over to invest. The second order effects hit too. Businesses relocate or downsize. Job competition increases. Commutes get worse as housing pushes people outward. Retirement gets delayed because you can't build the same margin you used to. If you're in places like Los Angeles or the Bay Area, the risk isn't just higher taxes. It's this. The timeline for financial independence stretches. Your ability to help your kids, care for your parents, or pivot careers shrinks. Your move in California starts with control. Audit what you can control. Withholding and estimated taxes. Deductions and credits you might be missing. Your property tax situation and local measures. Your long-term plan. Are you building flexibility or locking yourself in? Because in a high-cost state, flexibility is power. 2. New York, the empire state crumbling under its own weight. New York has a unique combination. High state taxes, high local taxes, especially in and around New York City. Heavy reliance on finance and high income earners. A post-COVID shift in commuting and residency behavior that changed revenue patterns. New York doesn't just tax you at the state level. It can tax you by layering state income, tax, city income, tax for NYC residents, high property taxes in many counties, aggressive fees and surcharges, potential congestion, carbon, or transportation-related charges depending on policy direction. And when revenue gets shaky, New York tends to do two things. Talk about millionaire taxes and high earner surcharges. Expand the base and tighten enforcement so more people get captured. A key risk in New York is that your cost increase may not show up as one headline rate change. It shows up as a surcharge here, a temporary add-on there, a broadened definition of taxable income or worker classification, a more aggressive stance on who counts as a resident. That last one is huge. Residency rules can turn into a trap for people who think they've moved but haven't moved correctly. If you keep a home, keep ties, spend enough days, or maintain certain connections, you can still be considered taxable. Then there's property tax and reassessment risk. In places where property values have shifted dramatically, reassessments can move the burden unevenly, and your share can rise even if the rate doesn't. If your neighborhood becomes more valuable on paper, your bill follows. The everyday reality is brutal for working households. Rent is high. Childcare is high. Transportation costs are high. Taxes make it harder to build a buffer. So families do what families always do. They search for margin. That's why you see outmigration patterns to lower tax states. People don't leave because they hate their state. They leave because math wins. And when enough people leave, the remaining base carries more of the load. If you're in New York, one smart move is defensive paperwork. Know your property tax exemptions and deadlines. Keep records that support your residency status if you split time. Don't wait until an audit letter to get serious, because the most expensive taxes are the ones you didn't plan for. 3. Illinois. Debt so deep it pulls the whole state down. Illinois is often the case study for what happens when pension obligations outgrow political courage. When pension costs dominate the budget, everything else becomes a fight. Schools' public safety infrastructure, healthcare social services. And when those things can't be cut without backlash, revenue becomes the pressure valve. Illinois has had long-running concerns around pension funding levels and fiscal stability. In that environment, the recurring ideas tend to look like this. Income tax increases or attempts to restructure the tax system. Expanding what counts as taxable income. Increasing local property taxes, especially in major metro areas. Raising sales taxes or expanding what gets taxed. More fees, license fees, vehicle-related fees, service fees. Here's why Illinois can feel especially punishing. Property taxes become the silent killer. When the state can't solve its budget, local governments often compensate. That means your property taxes fund the gap. And property taxes are relentless because they don't care about your income that year. They care about your home and your location. So even if you have a rough year personally, the tax bill still shows up like clockwork. The middle class gets hit first. Wealth can move. Corporations can restructure. The working homeowner can't just pick up their foundation and relocate overnight. And as costs climb, you get secondary effects. credit ratings pressure that increases borrowing costs, municipal stress that raises fees and reduces services, economic stagnation that limits wage growth. Exactly when taxes are rising, this combination is how you get stuck. Higher bills, slower income growth, weaker job markets. If you're in Illinois, tax planning is not optional. This is where you talk to a professional and ask, are Roth conversions smart for my situation? How exposed am I to future changes in how retirement income is taxed? Should I structure side income differently? Can I lower my taxable income legally through retirement plans, HSAs, or business deductions? In states with fiscal pressure, the rules change. You want to be ahead of those changes, not reacting to them. 4. New Jersey. Squeeze between giants and squeezing you, New Jersey has a reputation for high property taxes, and it earned it. The state sits in an expensive corridor, close to major job markets, high demand, high cost structures, and that drives government spending and the need for revenue. New Jersey's challenge is familiar. Property taxes are already heavy. Cost of living is high. Remote work and corporate shifts change the revenue picture. Political pressure tends to favor soak the top messaging, while the base still absorbs the real weight. The kinds of proposals and pressures that show up in this environment include higher income tax brackets or surcharges, corporate tax adjustments, wealth tax style concepts framed as rainy day, funding, changes to estate and inheritance planning rules, local reassessments that can swing property tax bills sharply. And again, the middle class experience isn't a single dramatic headline. It's a slow takeover of your monthly margin. Property taxes climb, commuting costs climb, healthcare costs climb, home maintenance costs climb, fees climb. And then the phrase doing fine turns into barely holding it together, even for households that look stable on paper. New Jersey also has a unique psychological trap. People stay because they're close to family, close to opportunity, and they've already built a life there. That's real. But loyalty doesn't reduce the bill. If you're in New Jersey, you fight for every credit and every assessment review you're entitled to. Homestead benefits and credits. Know what applies, when it applies, and how it phases. Property tax appeals. If your assessed value is out of line, challenge it. Estate planning. Don't wait until a crisis to learn what your state does to transfers. The goal isn't panic. The goal is leverage. 5. Connecticut. The nutmeg state cracking under pressure. Connecticut combines 3 things that create tax stress. High property tax burdens in many areas. Revenue volatility, competition with nearby states for high income residents. When a state's revenue can swing, budget stability becomes fragile. And when you mix that with high service costs and long-term obligations, the pressure to raise revenue returns again and again. In Connecticut, you often see discussions around income tax adjustments or bracket changes, surcharges on capital gains or higher earners, property tax increases tied to local initiatives, nuisance, taxes, and fees that slowly expand. Increased enforcement. Connecticut's risk is that it can become a state where wealth leaves because the value equation breaks. Job growth slows because businesses choose friendlier environments. Public services strain because costs rise faster than revenue. And when that happens, the people who remain, working professionals, homeowners, families, carry more of the load. If you're in Connecticut, you build tax sheltering and flexibility into your plan. Not loopholes, not games, just smart structure. Maximize tax-advantaged retirement accounts when possible. Use HS as, if eligible, Consider 529 plans if you're saving for education. Review your asset location, what you hold in taxable versus tax-advantaged accounts. Reduce in-state exposure where it makes sense for your life plan. The theme is simple. Don't let your financial future be overexposed to one state's fiscal problems, the blueprint these states share, and why it matters even if you're not rich. These 5 states share the same toxic pattern: declining or shifting tax bases, massive long-term obligations, especially pensions and healthcare, overdependence on volatile revenue streams like high earner income and capital gains, political reform that often means rearranging costs, not reducing them, the slow expansion of fees and taxes that don't make headlines. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. This isn't just about the wealthy. If the system is short billions, it can't be fixed by taxing a few people more. Those people are too mobile, too variable, and too small a group to reliably fund an entire state's promises year after year. So the burden spreads. It always spreads. That's why you see sales taxes broadened into services, property taxes increased through local measures and reassessments, fees layered onto vehicles, utilities, permits, and licenses. Gig and side income more aggressively captured, residency enforcement tightened. And then you wake up one day realizing your household is paying more for less while being told it's necessary for the future. You think you're safe because you're not rich? That's the trap. The middle class is the most dependable revenue source any government has. You show up, you work, you pay. You're not optimized for avoidance, and you're not positioned for instant relocation. That makes you reliable. And reliable is exactly who gets squeezed. How this hits your life. The real consequences beyond the tax bill. This isn't just a spreadsheet problem. It's a life design problem. Higher taxes and higher costs do a few things that are especially dangerous for a working household. They destroy margin is what funds, savings investments, emergency buffers, career pivots, starting a business, supporting family, taking opportunities. When margin disappears, you become fragile, and fragility is expensive. They delay freedom. You can call it retirement, financial independence, owning your time, whatever you want. The point is, your timeline stretches, and the longer you're forced to grind just to keep up, the fewer choices you have. They turn good income into high overhead. A strong salary feels great until your fixed costs climb so high that you can't breathe. Then you're not wealthy. You're expensive. They make you dependent on stability that doesn't exist. If your lifestyle requires the economy to always be strong, your job to always be secure, and your health to always cooperate, you're living on a thin wire. Taxes rising during uncertain economic cycles is how people get knocked off that wire. What you can do now, a practical defense plan. No panic, no doom, just action. Here's how to prepare like an adult who wants control. 1. Audit your paycheck withholding. Most people treat withholding like a background setting. That's a mistake. If your state increases taxes, your withholding can change and your net pay drops immediately. Review your pay stub. Know what your state withholding is today. Run scenarios. What happens if it rises 1%, 2%, 3%? If you're self-employed or have side income, review estimated taxes. Penalties happen when people hope it works out. Hope is not a plan. 2. Know your full tax burden, not just income tax. Your total burden includes state income tax, local income tax, where applicable, property tax, sales tax, vehicle fees, tolls, registration utility charges, and local assessments. When people say, my state tax isn't that bad, they're often ignoring the taxes embedded in everything else. Track it for 3 months. You'll see the pattern. 3. Fight property taxes with data, not emotion. If your assessment is wrong, challenge it. If exemptions exist, claim them properly. If deadlines exist, respect them like they're life or death, because financially, they might be. Property tax is one of the few areas where effort can directly lower what you pay, but only if you engage. 4. Build tax-advantaged habits that scale. Even if laws change, shelters still matter. Not as a loophole, just as smart structure, depending on eligibility and your situation. Max out employer retirement matches. Use HS as if available. Use tax-advantaged education savings. If that's in your plan, consider how you invest. Taxes on dividends and capital gains are real. If you have a side business, structure it correctly and track deductions professionally. This is where discipline pays twice. You keep more money and you build long-term momentum. 5. Get serious about residency rules if relocation is on the table. If you ever consider moving, understand this. States don't just let go because you changed your mailing address. Residency and domicile rules can involve days spent in the state, a primary home where your family lives, where you work, where your doctor, bank, and social ties are, where your valuables and vehicles are registered. If you do it correctly. Sloppy moves are expensive moves. 6. Stress test your household budget like a man who protects his future. Run the scenario. What if your seems small tax burden rises by $200 per month? What if property taxes rise $150 per month? What if insurance rises $100 per month? Now you're at $450 per month. That's $5,400 per year. What does that do to your savings rate, your debt payoff plan, your investment contributions, your ability to handle a layoff? Stress testing isn't pessimism, it's leadership. 7. Choose accountability over complaint. Complaining is easy. Accountability is rare. If you're going to stay in a high-tax state, get involved. Vote in local elections that decide property taxes and bond measures. Read the fine print on ballot initiatives. Support transparency around pension funding and spending commitments. Because if you don't pay attention, you will still pay. The closing reality: this is about affordability, not politics. This isn't about whether a policy sounds compassionate or tough. This is about whether the life you built remains affordable. Because a tax increase isn't just more money to the government. It's less money to invest, less money to save, less money to build options, less room to handle shocks, less freedom to choose your next move. And it doesn't arrive with a siren. It arrives with a slightly smaller paycheck, a slightly bigger bill, a slightly higher fee, until slightly becomes your new normal. So don't wait for your pay stub to change. Take control before it's forced on you. Audit your withholding. Track your real total burden. Protect your property tax position. Use every legal tax advantage available. Build flexibility into your plan. And if relocation is part of your long-term strategy, learn the rules now, not later. Because the clock is always ticking. And this isn't just about money. It's about whether next year you're still building or just surviving.